I spent my first few years as a solo founder wishing for more of everything. More time, more money, and more people so I could build more features to get more customers. But here's the thing. It was hard to get more people to work on my product without more money, leaving me with more things to do and not enough time to do them. These limiting constraints felt like a classic catch-22, and then I heard a story of how one company turned their limiting constraint into a competitive advantage that transformed them from the verge of bankruptcy to the most profitable company in their industry. This story not only changed my perspective on constraints, but also the trajectory of my own startup and business model. And it's something I recommend every startup founder consider doing. Hi there, if you're new to this channel, my name is Maurya. I'm an entrepreneur and author and the creator of the popular one-page business modeling tool, Lean Canvas, used by millions of founders worldwide. On this channel, I share systematic strategies and techniques for launching and growing a startup. So picture this, it's 1971 and you're the president of Southwest Airlines. You have just won a brutal 4-year David and Goliath battle with bigger airlines to earn the right to fly, but at a great cost. There are only $143 left in your bank account, which is barely enough to pay the daily wages of a single employee, never mind getting an airplane off the ground. Now, when most companies get hit with a limiting constraint like this, they do one of two things. First, they might fall victim to the constraint and accept defeat. This might mean downsizing operations and maybe even filing for bankruptcy if you're an airline. Or option two, they might try to brute force the constraint, and this might mean knocking on more investor doors or taking on more debt to frantically raise money and resources to try to stay afloat. Southwest could have easily chosen either path. They could have accepted downsizing and cut their routes, or they could have spent their remaining energy trying to raise emergency funding. Instead, they chose a different option. They leveraged their constraint. They decided to sell one of their 4 planes to extend their runway. But instead of seeing this as a devastating setback, they asked themselves a very different question. How do we keep our existing routes with 3 planes instead of 4 planes without raising money to buy another plane? Now, this is a great example of a propelling question. It ties together a bold ambition with a limiting constraint, and it forces breakthrough thinking. This is when Bill Franklin, vice president of terminal operations, started analyzing the situation differently. He realized that most planes sit idle at gates for an hour in between flights, and every minute a plane spent idle on the ground was costing them valuable time and money. Gate turnaround time was their bottleneck resource, and he did the math to determine that if they could shrink that gate turnaround time from 60 minutes to 10 minutes, they could fly all their current routes with 1 less airplane. But how could you cut down turnaround time by 83%? They started timing and measuring everything, and it was all hands on deck. There are more than 100 tasks that have to be completed before a plane can depart from a gate, and a delay in even one of them can derail the entire operation. They identified passengers boarding the plane as one of the most time-consuming tasks because passengers had to shuffle down the aisle looking for their assigned seat, climb over each other to get to their seat, and negotiate overhead bins. So they did something that seemed very radical at the time. They eliminated assigned seating entirely. And they told passengers to simply get on the plane and just sit wherever they wanted. The end result, they ended up shrinking their gate turnaround time to 10 minutes and managed to keep all their routes with 1 less airplane. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. They didn't stop there. Most companies would have celebrated solving their immediate problem and moved on, but Southwest realized that they had discovered something even more powerful. That leveraging their constraints created competitive advantages, and so they did something counterintuitive. They leaned into them even further. While their competitors carried diverse fleets of planes to support varying route lengths, Southwest decided to fly a single type of aircraft, Boeing 737s. Why? Because a diverse fleet invites complexity. Each plane has different maintenance requirements, requires different pilot training, and different parts to service them. They realized that if they stuck to just one type of airplane, their mechanics would become experts on that plane, their pilots could fly any plane in the fleet, and their parts inventory would shrink dramatically. And it didn't stop there. While competitors offered multiple cabin classes, Southwest offered only economy seats. While competitors served full meals, Southwest only offered peanuts and snacks. And while competitors built complex hub-and-spoke networks, Southwest flew only short point-to-point routes. Each additional constraint made them even more efficient. A single type of aircraft reduced maintenance complexity, no meals meant faster turnarounds, and point-to-point routes eliminated connection delays and baggage transfers. And rather than apologizing for these constraints as limitations, Southwest turned them into a differentiated positioning statement. We are the only short-haul, low-fare, high-frequency point-to-point carrier in the United States. They didn't apologize for their constraints, but celebrated them as features. And it worked. These constraint-driven innovations transformed them from an airline on the verge of bankruptcy into one of the most profitable airlines in the industry. Now, if the Southwest story has you thinking differently about your business model constraints and you want more systematic approaches for leveraging your own startup constraints, grab my 6-part email course at leanfoundry.com/juststart. In the next section, I'm going to show you how to get started by asking yourself a propelling question just like Southwest did. And here's the prompt. How do I achieve my goal without acquiring more of a specific limiting resource? This question forces breakthrough thinking because it eliminates the obvious answers of revising your goal downward or getting more resources, and instead forces you to innovate through your limiting constraints. Coming back to my own startup story, where I wished I had more time, money, and people so I could build more features to get more customers, I posed the following propelling question to myself. How do I build my product without more time, money, or people? The first realization I then had was that I was focused on the wrong goal. As I considered the portfolio of past products I had been involved with at other startups, I realized that building a working product didn't always correlate with a working business model. In fact, more often than not, the products we had built had failed in the marketplace. And so I refined my prompt to something different. How do I build a working business model without more time, money, or people? And as I thought about this some more, I realized that the cause of all these failures hadn't been a lack of time, money, or people. We had been a well-funded startup with a team of 30 people. We had built exactly what we wanted to build, and yet we still failed. While we had built a lot of stuff, it was stuff that just not enough people wanted. And so that forced me to rethink my goal even further, and I decided to align it with what I consider to be the best measure of a working business model, which is traction or engagement of your idea with its market. And so this became my new propelling question. How do I get traction without more time, money, or people? This got me tinkering and optimizing a traction-first versus build-first approach to building business models, and that led me to a counterintuitive realization that yes, it is possible to test an idea with customers and even get them to buy your product before you build it. And this was a huge breakthrough because it meant that you didn't need a big team or tons of time to first build a perfect working product. The biggest bottleneck to optimize wasn't racing to build a working product, but figuring out the right product to build in the first place. A build-first approach, like assigned seats on a plane, actually caused more founders to waste needless time, money, and effort building the wrong product. I've since then started and launched many successful products of my own, ranging from books to services to software, and all these products were started as part-time side hustles where I bootstrapped them as a solo founder first to customer revenues before bringing on more people to grow them even further. So if you're an early stage startup founder, start with the following propelling question. How do I get traction without more time, people, or money? And if you have a different or more specific propelling question, drop it in the comments below. What goal are you trying to achieve, and what's your current limiting constraint? I read every comment, and often these become the foundation for future videos. Next, if you want the systematic frameworks I use for breaking through constraints, grab my free startup toolkit at leanfoundry.com/juststart. It's everything I wish I had when I was first starting out. And finally, if you're still wondering how to validate your product before you build it, check out this video over here where I show you how to test any business idea in less than 90 days without building the full product. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.